Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I am Uzma Jafri. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Friday, the 31st of August. BIMSTEC leaders signed Kathmandu Declaration to tackle poverty militancy. Anti-Pakistan protests held in Sindh, Balochistan against enforced disappearances. High Peace Council members running for Afghan parliament urged to step down. And now for all the details. The fourth BIMSTEC summit, which concluded on Friday, was focused on minimizing climate change effects, poverty and improving connectivity between the member nations. The leaders of the 7 nations grouping also expressed commitment for joint counter-terrorism efforts during the 2-day summit.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with other leaders of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation or BIMSTEC, attended the second day of its meeting in Nepal's Kathmandu city on Friday. The fourth BIMSTEC summit, which concluded on Friday, was focused on minimizing climate change effects, poverty and improving connectivity between the member nations. The leaders also recognized terrorism as a common enemy and expressed their commitment for joint counter-terrorism efforts. To mark the ending of BIMSTEC summit, Nepalese Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli handed over chairmanship of the grouping to Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena.
So the Kathmandu Declaration has focused to concentrate our efforts to alleviate the poverty, to address the adverse effects of the climate changes, to accelerate our efforts to make the vibrant connectivity between the member states.
Earlier in the day, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held separate bilateral talks with Prime Minister of Thailand, President of Myanmar and Chief Advisor of Interim Government of Bhutan. While addressing the inaugural session of the BIMSTEC summit on Thursday, Modi advocated connectivity, cooperation and coordination among the nations to counter the menace of terrorism and drug trafficking. He also called for cooperation to provide humanitarian assistance during natural disasters in the region.
Moving on. Anti-Pakistan protests were held across Balochistan and Sindh on Thursday to mark the International Day of the Victims of Enforced Disappearances. Activists have long blamed Pakistani forces of using enforced disappearances as a tactic to silence critics and instill fear.
Massive anti-Pakistan protests were held across Balochistan and Sindh on Thursday as family members of missing persons demanded their early release on the International Day of the Victims of Enforced Disappearances. The day is observed throughout the world to draw attention to the crime of the state whereby individuals are picked up and kept in habeas corpus and incommunicado without any legal representation. Activists have long blamed Pakistani forces of using enforced disappearances as a tactic to silence critics and instill fear. They blamed the security forces for enforced disappearances, torture and killing of Sindhi and Baloch political activists and other intellectuals.
कानून तो सिर्फ नाम के लिए बनाया हुआ है, लेकिन वो उसे अप्लाई नहीं किया जाता यहाँ पे. अगर कोई आवाज़ उठाता भी है तो वो उसके लिए महंगा पड़ जाता है. इसीलिए मैं एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल से, ह्यूमन राइट्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से अपील करती हूँ कि वो इन सब चीज़ों के लिए सख्त से सख्त एक्शन लें.
Since 2010, there have been over 1,200 cases of enforced disappearances in Sindh. Around 160 people have disappeared since February last year. The people who are enforcedly disappeared are mainly human rights and political activists or journalists who criticize government's policies and actions against Sindhi people.
In news from Afghanistan, residents of several cities across Afghanistan have expressed concern over high security threats they are facing due to Taliban attacks. Meanwhile, the country's defense ministry also sided with the claims of threats and have informed international forces in Afghanistan.
Residents of many Afghan cities have raised concerns over high security threats by Taliban to centers of many provinces. The Defense Ministry has also sided with these concerns and have informed the US troops in Afghanistan. People of Gardez, Kunduz, Ghazni, Farah and Maimana cities have expressed their fears of possible collapse of these areas to the Taliban. Meanwhile, the Interior Ministry claimed that they have enough troops to tackle the threats by militants.
دغه تشویشونو باندې زموږ نړیوال دوستان هم هغوی سره هم بحثونه شوي دي او د هغوی هغه هوایي ملاتړ او دا ټول مسایل چې دي دا په پام کې نیول شوي.
Residents are living in a constant fear of attacks by militants and it makes them feel unsafe in their own homes.
اساساً ارزیابیایی را که از طرف دکتران نظامی میشه و متخصصین نظامی میشه به اساس او نیرو را برشان در نظر میگیریم.
This comes a day after officials of Faryab province confirm that its capital Maimana city faces high security threats and it has affected its development projects and daily lives of the residents. Taliban attacks have caused high casualty rates among army forces and have become a major concern for the Afghan government.
More on news from Afghanistan. Independent Election Commission of Afghanistan has asked the High Peace Council members who are running in the upcoming elections to step down from their positions. The poll body warned if the council members use their positions in the poll activities, their names will be dropped as candidates.
The Independent Election Commission of Afghanistan or IEC has said that the incumbent members of the High Peace Council or HPC who have filed nomination papers to run in the upcoming parliamentary elections must leave their current posts. The poll body said if the HPC members use the facilities and privileges of the Peace Council in the poll activities, their names will be dropped as candidates. But the HPC argues that the peace body is not a government institution and their members should not have to resign from their posts if they run in the elections.
روح قانون چیسته؟ چرا یک شخص از سمت خود باید استعفا کنه؟ به خاطر که از اونمو جایگاهی که داره از او سوء استفاده صورت نگیره. شما یک جایگاهی دارید.
عضویت شورای صلح افغانستان دارن اما به این معنا نیست که عضویت حکومت دارن. حکومت اگر می بود او سیستم خود می داشت، حاضری خود می داشت، معاش می داشت. اینا تنها به خاطر رفت آمدشون یک مصارف ترانسپورت دارن و مصارف تماس ها را دارن بس.
The election observers in the country have blamed the Election Commission for the controversy, saying there are probably dozens of other candidates who are still taking advantage of government resources directly or indirectly. Afghanistan will witness the parliamentary and district council elections in October this year.
A nationwide vaccination campaign against measles diseases will be rolled out on Saturday, the Afghan Ministry of Public Health said on Thursday. The ministry called on families across the country to get their children vaccinated against the disease.
Afghanistan is expected to launch a nationwide measles vaccination campaign on Saturday, the Afghan Ministry of Public Health said on Thursday. The ministry has called off families across the country to vaccinate their children between the ages of 9 months and 10 years against measles. Statistics show that over the last 6 months, 58 children died of measles across the country, while 68 died last year.
طفل مثل ریزش و زکام هست، یعنی از بینیش ها میاد، چشماش سرخ هست، چشماش اشکریزی داره و در ضمن عطسه و سرفه و تب و جاندردی به اشتیایی کسالت و نارامی داره.
او جایی که متاسفانه ناامن است، دسترسی به مراکز صحی مردم زیاد نداره، او اطفال زیادتر قربانی این مرض میشه.
The vaccination campaign will first be carried out in the 17 provinces and the process will be expanded to the remaining provinces within the next 3 months. It is expected over 13.8 million children under the age of 10 will get the vaccine during the campaign.
Devout Hindus carried more than 1,000 porridge pots in India's southern Rameswaram city to be presented as offerings to Hindu goddess Amman on Friday. The devotees said they believe that performing the ritual will make the goddess happy and their families will not have to face hunger.
Devout Hindus gathered to offer special prayers and carried more than 1,000 pots in India's southern Rameshwaram city on Friday to give offerings to the Hindu goddess Amman. Devotees turned up in large number in the coastal city and were seen holding 1,008 clay pots filled with porridge on their heads. They also offered a special prayer at the Ramanatha Swami temple. The devotees said they believe that fasting and performing the ritual will make the deities happy and their families will not have to face hunger. They also prayed for good rains throughout the year. Special prayers and rituals like these are a common occurrence in India, where more than 75% of India's 1.3 billion people identify themselves as Hindus.
A cultural festival was organized in Leh region of India's northern Jammu and Kashmir province by native tribals to preserve their age-old culture. The festival also aimed at boosting tourism in the region.
Leh region in India's northern Jammu and Kashmir province on Thursday witnessed hundreds of locals participating and attending the varied cultural programs performed by the native tribal community. The communities gathered in the Himalayan desert of Leh to take part in the two-day Aryan festival, which aimed at encouraging the Aryans for preserving their culture, traditions and customs despite the advancement made in today's world. The tribal clad in traditional attires celebrated by dancing to the tunes of folk music.
हमारा जो आर्यन फेस्टिवल हो रहा है अभी हमारा ये फेस्टिवल सेलिब्रेट करने का हमारा जो मेन जो एम है वो एक तो कल्चर को प्रिजर्व करना है, दूसरा टूरिज्म को प्रमोशन करना है, क्योंकि यहाँ पर जो आर्यन हम लोग है आर्यन है, प्योर आर्यन वहाँ से और हमारा कल्चर कम्प्लीटली यूनिक है.
The festival also hoped to usher in a new wave of tourism to the mountain range located at over 17,000 feet above the sea level. The geoclimatic conditions, the landscape, culture and tradition have been few of the reasons that tourism has rapidly developed in the area.
A 30-year-old from India's eastern Odisha province has become the country's first transgender cab driver. She has encouraged more members of the transgender community to look at driving as a viable career option to become self-reliant.
India recently got its first transgender cab driver from Bhubaneswar city of its eastern Odisha province. 30-year-old Megha Sahu was hired by a private online transportation network company and became the first transgender to be a professional cab driver. Meghna, who holds an MBA degree in HR and marketing, had to face numerous difficulties finding a job due to society's discrimination against transgenders. In a landmark judgment in 2014, the Supreme Court ruled that transgender people had equal rights under the law and granted legal status to the third gender. However, transgender in India continue to face persistent bias.
Maximum will see that male drivers are there, but being a transgender, I proved that we can do that work in very completely. So that's why I joined, to prove that all the organization, all the society, when they think, transgender can't do these things. Being a transgender, if I'm doing the male work, those people are earlier in that profession, to entering that profession and being a good worker at that organization.
Meghna has encouraged more members of the transgender community to look at driving as a viable career option to become self-reliant. Transgender often live in secluded communities in India and have no choice but to beg on the streets or sing and dance at private parties to earn a living.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on southasianewsline.com. You can also visit us on facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week. Have a great weekend. Good night.